What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Hello and welcome to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie, where we believe an experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me now in studio is world-renowned psychic Eddie Connor.
Thanks, Tony. Hi, everybody. We have a few questions for listeners. Are you feeling disheartened and dehumanized at work? Are you in toxic water cooler conversations at your company? Are you groaning on Mondays and dragging your feet through the week, or questioning if you've sold your soul for a paycheck? Ooh. If so, are you ready to become a catalyst of greatness and to zealously champion your human spirit at work? If you are,
Zombies to Zealots was written just for you. This book is a personal rescue kit to help you wake up and to call your spirit back into your work.
It's an absolute heartfelt guide to reawaken, remember, reconnect, and rehumanize the game of work. All of this while awakening your spirit at the same time.
DJ Mitsch is an internationally recognized thought leader, award-winning entrepreneur, soulful author, and master coach that is fulfilling a bold mission to reawaken people to their personal genius.
And we love that. What we also love about DJ is that she passionately lives with one foot in the world of spirit and one foot in the world of business. This is the perfect position for calling leaders and teams back to life at work. DJ is also the creator of the original breakthrough team coaching program, Team Advantage, which guides teams to play full out and realize their highest potentials.
I think listeners are ready to reawaken their human spirit at work. Don't you, Eddie?
I do, absolutely. So please put your hands and hearts together and welcome internationally acclaimed thought leader and the author of Zombies to Zealots, DJ Mitsch.
Yay! DJ Mitsch is in the house.
Wow! I'm going to carry you guys around in my pocket. So that sounds like a really cool book.
Well, if you're going to carry me around, it's going to be a big pocket, I'll tell you.
I know. You have to get, you got to get two pocket DJs.
Right.
That's what it'll be. I'll be the zealot. He can be the zombie.
Oh, well, zombies right now are very popular, so I'll take it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, see, he's going for the cash cow.
Yeah, and? Yeah. Is there a problem?
and what's the
I'm dead.
So,
well, Eddie, go ahead.
Well, see, DJ, first of all, just a little bit of really quick history. I have known DJ. I was like calculating this up in my sophisticated head, DJ, okay? Because I can do math and stuff. I graduated from.
Good for you, Eddie.
Yeah, I did from high school. We've known each other 23 years.
You guys have?
Yeah, we've known
each
each
other
other.
in grade school.
Yep. Yeah. I was just a little apple dumpling in my grandma's pie. But for real, we've known each other 23 years. And my first, which I was scarified, I was genuinely scared to death, was DJ at the time was managing one of the biggest radio stations in the southeastern
Good
U.S.
for you, DJ.
And
It was fun.
it was wonderful. So we did this thing on the air for the morning show, which is the first time I'd ever done anything public as an intuitive. And that's in the Bible buckle of the Bible bell, ain't it, DJ?
Oh, yeah.
And
Don't get me started.
And so at the end of this experience, which was, I'm not going to go into it, it ruffled a lot of feathers. It ruffled feathers. And every church across the southeastern U.S. was calling the station, and they were just going kind of crazy. DJ, that was the first time I met her. I was brought back to her office. We were talking together. Mm-hmm. She was talking about her philosophy with spirituality and business, even back then. And she was fielding calls from irate people with limited imagination.
Mostly pastors.
Yes.
Amen, sweet Jesus.
She was quoting Bible verses top to bottom, left to right, up and down, back to them, and then giving them the meaning of the verses while she was simultaneously communicating with me and trying to get me back into my body because I was so scared. And
well, first, I want to find out just a second of what the response was because they're probably not expecting somebody to throw it back at them.
I had somebody call my hotline, which was it was a private number for me and the newspaper publisher who was my direct boss at the time, and a pastor called through on that line.
Oh.
And he said, "Are you aware of what you're doing?" He said, "You've got people around here talking." We blew up the phone lines in the city, in the Raleigh-Durham area, with all the calls that came in to find out what was going on. And what Eddie's not telling you is that a psychic came on the air with our morning show, with the Bob and Mike show, Bob and the Showgram now, they're still on the air. And she trans-channeled Nostradamus into Eddie. And Eddie had, you know how Eddie talks. Well, when Nostradamus was talking, it sounded like a fine Merlot. So there were like two things going on, and it really hit the marketplace in a way that you've just never seen anything before. So I basically asked that minister when he asked me if I knew what I was doing, if I had been saved. I said, let's really talk about what's going on here. And he said, I think you're doomed. And I was like, I'm really sorry to hear somebody say that, and see if this sounds like me hanging up. And so I did. And it was just really, it was really stirring for people. But my boss, who had 9 children, called me and said, "This is great radio."
I was going to say to have that lines light up, I'm like, that's a radio's dream.
It truly blew the lines at the station.
Yeah.
Wow. But
so that's how we met. And then Eddie and I got to be friends, and I relied on him to really help me figure some things out too, because we all look for guides along the way. And as Eddie has said to me, I think you even said on the air that day, people come to a psychic for one of 3 things, and it's career, money, and primary relationship.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why they come to a coach.
Right. Yeah.
So, so we're walking similar pathways, and actually I am also highly intuitive and a psychic, but I don't use that very often. And I do tune in when I feel permission to do that. And so I bridge the 2 worlds. I've actually had, loved ones of some of the people that I've worked with, both as colleagues and as clients show up in my hand, in my journals and stuff, and so occasionally I want to ask to share what I've seen. But most of the time I'm following a real strict principle of just guiding a conversation for people to access their own wisdom, because, in some ways we all look to be told what's going on in those 3 categories, but in a lot of ways we want to figure it out for ourselves. We're playing a game, aren't we? That game on this planet.
Oh, my
beautiful planet.
Yeah. And it's, I think, well, first of all, you're super brave. She's always been phenomenally brave. And you walk the fine line between the spirit world and the physical world. And you're one of the first, if not the first person to bring spiritual energy and the soul into corporate America. And you're doing it in a way where I feel like you're spoon feeding deliciously your language, your vernacular, your approach on a physical level. And then I also love the way you just drop to your heart. I call it the heart, mind, and the gut brain. And you talk about that in your book, in your language. But the thing I walked away with from Zombies to Zealots is the thing that I think we have lost, being somebody who worked in corporate America and finally got the heck out and started doing my own thing, is often people who are sensitive, creative, artistic, intuitive, instinctual, open-hearted, we kind of get bulldozed over, not seen, not heard, not felt. And then we really start to feel, as DJ says, we start to feel like zombies. Our enthusiasm is completely squashed. And we feel like not only are we not seen and heard, we don't feel like there's a team anymore. There's not a community, because often the way corporate comes in, and what she talks about so eloquently in the book is regardless of that, who are you in your spirit? Regardless of that, who is your authentic self? How can you bring those three elements, your mind, your heart, and your soul, back into your body, back into the workplace, regardless of what's actually going on there? And will you speak on that for a moment in your brave way?
Well, one of the first things I want to say is I had a beautiful HR director and a human resources director say to me in one of the biggest companies we worked in, you have a way of blending the world of spirit and work, so it's just normal enough. And I love that because that was my goal, right? That's part of my mission. So what I've seen is, what I've heard is that there's $387 billion spent on leadership development every year, and yet there are 80% of the world's workforce and 70% of the U.S. workforce is disengaged and disheartened. And so when I got that information, I sat back and went, well, what's missing here? And then we have a coaching school, and we were walking the medicine wheel as part of our ritual ceremony for opening. And I realized, we're spending a lot of time talking about neuroscience, and we focus in the mental categories, we focus in physical categories and our energy and health, we focus in emotional categories, but the spiritual categories, that doesn't have any language anymore. Mm-mm. And I don't know about you guys, but I want to work with people who are animated, who are more than just the flesh and bones sitting across the table from me, but who are really bringing all of who they are into the conversation. And, work is, it's the playing field for us if we're here to play a game on this planet, and I believe we are, so that we learn something. We do our inner work, we do our spiritual work, and I think a career path is the same thing as a spiritual path, for us to do that. And so, looking at how we play well together or not, how we create soulful companies, it's got to be the next frontier. Because we've lost that. It's just gone missing, hasn't it?
Well, I have to say, I tell Eddie all the time how blessed and lucky he is to work with somebody as animated as me.
Well, that's true, and I get that after having watched a couple of your shows now and listening to you. You are animated. And the two of you, by the way, are stunning. When I look at your pictures and I see you, it's like the lights popping out of your eyeballs. So whatever you're up to, keep it going, man.
I was going to say, you cut out for a second. I got to hear that again. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that because I actually worked in human resource for 10 years. From most of my 20s, I worked in HR and worked in corporate like Eddie.
That explains a lot.
I know. I hated it, by the way. But yeah, I agree how you do become a number. You do become just part of a not even a company, because you feel like you just come in, you don't know your name,
a machine.
And what I do notice though, and this is going back to more of the spiritual world, in 2012, I've noticed a huge change from 2010, even 2008 when Obama got elected. It was showing that there was starting to become a change with the Bernie supporters, how they completely different view on politics, on the earth itself and environments, and so I do see a big change happening, and I think this is someone like yourself is going to be such a great leader for this new era that we're not coming to, but already in the beginning stages of it.
I think you're right. We've been living in the time of the shadow, and we're seeing it play out in this election, in the U.S., where we've all got biases and opinions about what should or shouldn't happen, and I think probably the three of us would share the same view. But I'm looking at it going, isn't this interesting? And I loved what Will Smith said on the Colbert Show recently when he said, before things get really good in my marriage, sometimes they just really unravel. They kind of break down. And he said, that's when I know that I'm about to have a breakthrough. And he said, I kind of see that that's what's going on these days with what's going on all around the world, and particularly with the tension between races and stuff, with the police and everything. And I thought, what a beautiful and loving way to hold that, and I think that's really where we are. If we can hold this political mess that we all see and get disappointed in, is really sort of the shadow rearing its head for us to take a really hard look at. And do we really want to play that way? And one of the things I love right now is watching my kids who are 26 and 22, Jessica and Hank, and their friends. And I notice, we're living in a world where the values are changing, and they're changing in their world of work.
This is true.
And it's not just my kids, but it's the millennials, and I think they came in fully conscious, and awake, and they're just sort of helping us figure it out, because they're crowdsourcing everything. They've got Uber and Airbnb, and, and I was talking with a broadcaster who was in a program that closed yesterday that I've been doing this week called The Team Leader's Coach, and this guy said to me, I can't get these guys to be competitive, to go after each other anymore in the radio stations, because they just are wanting everything to feel fair. And I said, you need to pay attention to that, because that's where we are. We're in a very different world, very different. And I see it as hopeful. So I'm not seeing this as being a depressing space, but hopeful.
I love that you said that. Did you notice what happened when Jay Leno left the late night circuit? The second Jay Leno left the late night circuit on the talk shows, Stephen Colbert came together with Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon came together with the other ones. And then they started doing skits simultaneously saying, look, this isn't going to be a cutthroat contest like it was between Leno and Letterman. This is going to be a community that we're building to make people feel good despite what's going on in the world right now. And then we'll find a way to unify everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love them. And I love the space that Jimmy Fallon comes from, and the playfulness of Colbert and how bright they are. Mm-hmm. And we're also living then, if we talk about archetypes, in the time of the fool being the truth teller, right? The jester being the truth teller in the kingdom. And we're paying attention. That's where I'm getting my news. I don't know about you guys, but I'd much rather watch what's going on in the world through that lens than Fox. I'm just going to say it out loud.
You and me both, sister. So here's one of the things that I read about DJ. I was doing some research before our interview with you today, and one of the things I kept seeing over and over is companies would talk about how predominantly in North America that everything is about produce. And so we're overworking our employees, and we're usually underpaying the employees. And then so when they start getting sick, they don't want to come to work. They don't feel good. They don't feel appreciated. And then also the employee theft and all kinds of other things, health insurance policies, all of that went up. And I feel like I don't know how many years ago it was, I got to speak at SAS Institute right around the corner from where you are, and Jim Goodnight's company. And he said this on Oprah. He has a really amazing campus there, and he's one of the tech, moguls in the world. And she said, what made you have a campus filled with daycare and walking paths and naps and cots for people to sleep in, yoga and Pilates and aerobics and all of these other things, really good, healthy food? He said, well, it was common sense to me. He said, because one evening I'm sitting in my office at SAS Institute, and I was watching 95% of my profit drive through the front gate and go home. Mm-hmm. And he said, my sole purpose at that point was to make sure that the next day I gave them a reason for 100% of them to come back. Mm-hmm. And it feels like that's what you're doing with Zombies to Zealots. If the company won't do it for you, if your HR people don't want to be there, if you don't like the company you work for anymore, take responsibility, pull it back into yourself. And I feel like that's what you're doing with bringing people back into balance with their heart and their soul and their spirit.
Yeah, and so, this book has got 4 sections in it, and the first one is about reawakening to who you really are and calling your spirit back into your work. And I was inspired by the Hopi Nation, and the elders of the Hopi Nation are pretty widely published with something that's called Calling Your Spirit Back. And I love this. I'm going to read just a piece of this if it's okay with you guys. Yeah. So in ReAwaken, inspired by, we've been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now we must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. And there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? know your garden. It's time to speak your truth. And it goes on and on and on to talk about a river flowing very fast, and people are going to try to hold them to the shore. But the elders say we must let go of the shore and push off into the river and keep our eyes open. So see who's in there with you and celebrate, because at this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that you do now must be done in sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So one of the things that I wanted to do with the ReAwaken chapter was have people really realize that you can wait for somebody above you to figure this out, or you can figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, you've got only so much time to do what you're here to do, and we all have a purpose, right? So really banish the word struggle and look at what you're playing with in your life. And then I gave people some checklists in the book for, learning to look at that differently, to see if they're really a zombie or if they're moving into the space of zealing out. And then remember, in that chapter or section, I've given people stories of 7 types of zealots who are really stories of real people. There are 3 or 4 of them that are morphed, but the rest of them are people who allow me to tell their stories, which are beautiful about how they've sold out, how they became a part of a zombie team and moved on, how they worked for a zombie boss and what that allowed them to see about themselves. So all of this I'm putting into the lens of, really look around you and see what it is that you can learn to take control over so that you're not in a space of being victimized anymore. And then reconnect with other people, reconnect with those people around you, see the world, and I know you guys do a lot of work around this, but see the world around you as your learning lab. And then in the last chapter, and the reason I wanted to walk you guys through this, the last section is around rehumanizing work. And I had the distinct privilege of working with a group of 25 change agents with our team of coaches through the Pyramid Resource Group, and we went in to train them in some of our methodologies. And these change agents are frontline managers, so, they're not the highest level in the organization, and these people were sort of called out in the merger of 5 companies and trying to blend cultures, and the change initiative wasn't working. And so we said, all right, let's teach these people to go listen to the heartbeat of the organization and come back with theme reports that we can put our hands around so that we can really understand what needs to change in the organization and how they can change. And so we were going on a journey with them. So they signed up for a job for 2 years to work with us, not knowing if they'd have a job when they got back or a role that they could go back to. And they went in and coached people. They worked with senior leaders. And it's a beautiful story in the back of the book, and it's basically a pattern for how companies can do this. And the bottom line is we raised employee engagement from in the low 60s, around 60.4% to 90.4% in less than a year. And there was a hum of activity. People were focused. They knew what the mission and purpose was for the organization, and it was great. So I'll stop for a minute, but I'll tell you that I set out to write a book called Revolution.
Yeah.
Changing the Game of Work, and it was a 700-page manuscript, and I took it to a writer's workshop in Washington, D.C., and this beautiful man sitting next to me said, "That is so not who you are. You are a funny, smart-ass woman." And he said, "Nobody who's zombified wants to read 700 pages, so rewrite it."
Well,
and then he looked at me and said, "So what is it you do for people?" I said, "I bring people back to life at work." He said, "Because?" And I said, "Because they become zombified." And he said, "And when you finish?" I said, "They're zealed out. They're enthusiastic. They're focused. They're zealots." And he said, "That's the name of your book."
Wow.
Well, can I ask you this? And it sounds like, when Eddie met you, you were pretty much already, out there and very happy with what you were doing. But have you ever had that zombie moment?
Oh, God, yes. Don't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really running a radio station when I met Eddie, actually 2 stations. We had turned a big band station into a news talk, sports, and I was having the time of my life. I was working with senior people who had been broadcasters for a long time, and they were beautiful. We were a beautiful team, and everything was humming along. And I had second baby, and 3 days later, the stations were sold.
Oh.
And I met the new owners, and they came in, and they were doing deal. I was in a law office because I had to come with a 4-day-old baby to do the deal. And I met these guys, and I looked around and went, oh, my God, I don't see the light in their eyes. I don't see the soul. I don't know what they're doing. And they continued to make me feel small and feel really small. And so they ignored the fact that I had a baby in one arm and a diaper bag in the other and a bunch of files in an arm. And nobody offered to help me. I walked in and put everything down. And we were sitting there talking, and I just felt my heart sink. And I thought, there's no way. And they offered my job to me for another 6 months, but I'd be working alongside somebody they'd brought in. And I thought, after I met him and I saw what they were doing, they didn't buy any real property, I knew it was a financially highly leveraged game. And I went home and cried for 3 days and didn't sleep. And I said to my husband, I don't know how and why I'm saying this, but this is my last job in radio. And then I love the business, which totally freaked him out. But because he was like, okay, now what? What you going to do? And so I set out and did not know what I was going to do. I had fortunately, a package of support because that's how the universe supports me. So I can wallow in it for a little while and then move on. But I really didn't know and was in a huge question about what was next because that was my identity. I like getting in a limo and going to backstage in the concerts of all the artists I liked. I liked being all that in a bag of chips, and I wasn't anymore. People didn't care.
But I tell you what I love about that. You could have, what I hear when you say this, DJ, is you dropped into your heart. You dropped into your gut brain, your instinct, your intuition, your true self, your authentic self. And it took some soul searching. And I'm going to go back to what you said Will Smith said. I can tell in my marriage when things get really bumpy and they're breaking apart that I'm getting ready to have a breakthrough. You knew you had a breakthrough coming. You just didn't know what it was. There you dropped back into your heart. You're dropping back into your faith. And you could have very easily pulled a Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest at the Pepsi Cola table and screamed, "Don't F with me, fellas."
Well, I did that.
Good. And pushed, and you could have pushed against and tried to hold on to the old paradigm. So you used all of your positive aspects. You had some breakdown along the way, but then you dropped into this. It's like you're a soul alchemist when you work with people. And I'll be honest, I'll be bluntly honest. I was mortified when I was summoned to DJ's office. I was scared to death. And because they
had Dragon Lady.
That's exactly. They called her the Dragon Lady. And so it's the truth. And I was mortified. I literally felt like I had been in a bus wreck and I'm going to meet the female version of God. And she had all of this light emanating from her, but she made me feel absolutely equal to her. And she saw and heard me and allowed me to be in her presence, but she was lifting up. It's soul alchemy at its finest. I don't think you know how not to be a soul alchemist, DJ. I don't think you know how not to be an uplifter. And the fact that those men came in there in the South and you're a lady and you're carrying your baby and that they did not offer, they had no manners, that would have been my first sign too. It was time for you to check out and punch somebody's
Especially
card.
at that time in the South.
I know. Oh, you don't do that. Not in a woman's presence, child. We open doors. We hold your baby. We'll do whatever, don't we, DJ?
Yeah. And one of the beautiful men that I had worked for saw me through the conference room in this law office. He came running down the hall and grabbed me, and oh my God! And he held the baby. He held baby Hank for a little while and made sure I was okay. After I got in there and put everything down, he was like mortified. But that's how I met them. And I could sit and blame people all day long. I don't do victim very well, and I see a lot of people in these organizations who do, who are victimized to the point that they hang on to that because it gets them some level of attention, and they have become unconscious in doing so. And so what we're doing is we're basically tapping people on the shoulders and say, drop the word struggle, get over yourself, and get back on your horse, and let's go figure out what it is that you're here to do and what you can do to influence other people. Because we're all alchemists. We all have some level of, Olympic medal in us, right? There's something that we bring to the game, that's uniquely ours and that has us step up whenever we're challenged. And those who lose that light or that spark have found a comfortable way of just hiding out, and that's one of the things that I've seen, and we can invite people back to the game,
right? And don't you think though, victims sometimes it just works for them until it doesn't? I mean, because you see people all the time. You play the victim role, then people are like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What can I do?" But then until you get to a certain point in your life where I think if it's spirit or your destiny or something kicks in to where finally it says it's time to stop and make the realization that this is not working anymore, and that's when you make the change.
And some people never get to that place. But what I've noticed with the victim pattern thing, where people get attention or whatever they're looking for with that behavioral pattern, is in their 20s, you kind of get it. In their 30s, it's less tolerable. In their 40s, it's like, the door's over there.
It's like,
bye.
Bitch, please.
Oh, Lord.
Sorry.
So we're going to take a break, DJ, but when we come back, I want to continue with Remember, Reconnect, Rehumanize, but we also want to share that beautiful energy curve graphic that you had created so we can give the audience an illustration exactly about what you're doing with Zombies to Zealots and everybody. We're talking with darling DJ Mitch, and she's going to be right back after this brief commercial break. We'll see you in a minute. I'm Eddie Connor.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And you're listening to Truth Be Told.
Do you suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free, at home, and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's SWEET. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I am Eddie Connor.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And we have with us DJ Mitch. She's the author of Zombies to Zealots, and it's about reawaken the human spirit of all places. Tony, guess where?
Where?
At work.
Oh, at work.
I know. I mean, there's hardly any heart, mind, and soul left at work. And then what DJ Mitch is single-handedly doing, everybody, is changing the face of the planet by bringing that heart energy, that spirit energy, that soul energy. She uses spirit and soul interactively in the book Zombies to Zealots. Is that right, DJ?
I think we've got to do these days is to, hang on, we've got some reverb there.
Uh-oh, can you hear it?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things I propose in the book that we do is change the word employee to soul or spirit at work. You know, when the Titanic went on its voyage, it had how many thousands of souls. And you know, when a flight leaves from the Raleigh-Durham airport every day, there's a number of souls. There's 136 souls on the plane. And we get away from using that language. You know, we use spirits when we talk about going to the ABC store and buying some alcohol, but we have failed to really see human beings as souls or spirits at work. And as leaders, wouldn't that be an interesting lens to hold for an organization. And how would we treat people differently? One of the things that we cataloged like 101 different things that people are called at work.
Oh.
From diverse candidates to clock watchers to extroverts to introverts to geeks to heavy hitters and high performers and integrated talent, human capital, human resources, and new dogs, movers and shakers. And, people get labeled a lot of things, but they don't get labeled spirit, with spiritual language. And so if I'm looking to really animate an organization, that's what I want to do. And one thing that you said, Eddie, is that I'm single-handedly doing this. And I know you know that that's not true, and I thank you for honoring the work that I do. But, the work that we're doing, if that's sort of my inner spark, what I'm seeing is that that's what people are dying for these days. And when we worked with these change agents I told you about and training them, we put them in a circle with no materials for 3 days, and we just talked and listened and gave them kind of an invisible toolkit. And the woman who trained this with me, Barbara Poole, is a beautiful coach and colleague of mine. And I was looking around the room, and I said, do they get that they are really kind of angels? And she said, that was my thought exactly. She said, I've looked at them, and the lights are on. So they signed up for this amazing work, and I really think they were just dying to wake up and to be able to catalyze the energy in this organization and to, really re-energize the organization. And that was one of the pillars. So, you look at all the things, and I'm good at strategy for a business, but you look at the strategic imperatives of an organization, and there might be something around revenue or something around the products and how they're going to serve a public. But Energize Employees was one of the key pillars for this that was put forward by the woman who led this business. And it was, that was really the first thing that had to happen so the work could get done.
Yeah. Gosh, that makes so much sense.
It does make sense.
It's when you speak
simple
about it, it's very simple. That's what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. It's the most simple thing on the planet. But there's so few people doing it. So thank you for doing it and bringing it to our awareness and the audience's awareness today.
This just popped in my head because I looked over and our young, handsome intern, Tony's sitting here listening. And I think, because like I said, I worked in human resource also and he's worked in corporate work. Well, Tony just graduated college. Can someone use this book that really hasn't even been into the workforce, that they can actually... They don't have to reawaken, but can it help them just look at work differently?
Yeah, and it can keep them from moving into spaces that aren't truly aligned with who they are, So if one of the things I did with the book is I wrote it in sections so that you could pick it up and read any section. You don't have to start at the beginning and read all the way through. There are tools and tips and insights and kind of energies in the spaces between the words that, are meant to call out to you. So you might only read, I would say to Tony, the intern, you might only read the piece about the 7 different types of zombies. And you might see yourself in the runners, which I see a lot of young people in, and which is running from job to job, not really sure about what they want to settle for, chasing money.
Right.
And I say that, and in the same breath, I'll say, and they don't do that very long before they settle into, that doesn't work for me, that doesn't work for me. It's sort of like some of us shop for clothes, and I know you guys don't know anything about that. I tease you gently. But, but it's like you try things on. People try things on. And somebody who gets into radio is coming in, or into this kind of broadcast, is coming into a bastion of creativity. And so they're going to be happy for a long time, and they might not make the kind of money their mom and daddy want them to make, but they usually settle in and see something that is really important in the work, or something that's a lot of fun. And maybe that's what they need to do, is stay in the vein of just, is it fun? If it's not, as my granny used to say, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. She used the word ain't. You ain't doing it right, honey.
But don't you think, though, and I don't know about your family, but my parents, I love them more than life itself. But they were like, go out, get your degree, get your good job, and you just stick with that job, because it's security
and the reason they did that for us is because back then that was the truth.
Right.
Back then they could stay in a job for 40 or 50 years and retire comfortably, and that stopped around the 80s sometime. It started to change dramatically.
And Tony, let me ask you just a brief second. Your parents, what does your parents tell you about? Because, you're out here in California, so your parents must have been very open about you getting away. But what do your parents tell you about getting a job?
They're pretty open to, whatever I want to do and to just go try everything. They'd rather have me try everything, get the opportunity to do it, than just, do this. Because before I moved here, I worked at a broadcast company, and I hated that. I'd, come in, and then I'd just sit at a desk and, do the menial task over and over again. I did that, and I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
There's no life in that for you.
Oh, no.
It's like when I was back when I was your age and cute and young and thin and stuff. I was choreographing. I was teaching spiritual classes. I was a visual designer. I was decorating people's homes for Christmas. I started my own Christmas business. And my core essence is I like to make people feel good. And then I thought I need to make a payday so I can work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, because so far I hadn't been able to do that. So I went in and was almost talked into working for an insurance company selling insurance policies. I did. I swear to God.
I couldn't
And
imagine.
I went in and I was literally did the work for 2 weeks to become an official insurance salesman. And I was dying every day. And true story. Then I got a call from a job I had applied for, and then I finally got my 9 to 5 as a visual marketing designer for, remember Ivy's DJ? And then over at Hudson Belk, and then for Dillard's. And I'm like, hey. But if I had sold out for the paycheck, I would have lost that spark that she talks about. I would not have become the zealot. And I've been doing radio for 23 years. I'm an old queen, okay?
And good at it.
I love, what I loved, Tony and Tony, too, about what you were just saying is that I think parents are becoming more conscious. I had a daughter who studied religious studies, and when she declared her major, she said, I want to study cultures and religions because I feel like if I can understand why people believe what they believe, then I can understand why they behave the way they do.
That's right.
And I looked at her and said, if you say that in any interview for any job, you will be hired.
Yeah. It's huge.
But I had so many people also pat my hand and go, oh, bless your heart. She's going to do what? She's going to study what? And, one of the things that we do in coaching is we look at, that there are 3 columns of consciousness. The first column, and this is from Dr. Carolyn Mace's work, MYSS Mace, who's a renowned anthropologist and wrote Sacred Contracts and Alchemy of the Spirit and stuff. But in the 3 columns of consciousness, the first column is tribal. It's what others want from me. In the second column of consciousness, it's about individuation, and it's about where we really get clear about what we want and what we don't want. And that's when we pull away. And some kids do that when they're 13. Some people come in doing that from the time they're 2 years old. And some people, it takes a lifetime for them to actually get clear about what they really want. And that's why having a coach or having, a psychic counseling intuitive, having somebody who works with you to help you understand what it is that you will and will not do, which is aligned with your spirit, is so important. So we're working in those spaces. But the third thing, and this is the thing that I think is really interesting for you, Tony the intern, is the symbolic column of consciousness, that you answer the calling. When we think about doctors and lawyers and people who answer a calling into a profession and they thrive in those spaces, we think about Olympic athletes as they couldn't do anything other than that. But that's also true, Eddie, for you, and Tony Sweet, for you. You couldn't do anything other than the work that you're doing to be fully realized. And you're doing symbolic work. And that's why I'm a coach. It is my symbolic work. It gives me a language bridge. It gives me a platform for teaching and doing the things that I am designed to do. So, what I would say, what's Tony, the intern's last name?
It is
Querio?
Querio.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Querio?
Clario. Okay, so Tony Clario, my guess is that you're on a path, and that that you are coming into this space in a way that you're introduced to a lot of conversations, that you really want to be introduced to and to advance. So hang in there, buddy.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, we only have just like 4 minutes left. This hour went so
I
fast,
know.
so fast. Eddie, I'm sure you had a couple more questions.
Well, I would love for Tony to do really quick, because I love it. It's one of the things in Zombies to Zealots that I enjoyed, and I'm a visual person by nature. So I would like for him to pop up the energy curve graphic.
Okay, yeah,
There
I'll
it
take you
is.
through that.
All right. So, and it's now up for the viewers.
Okay, great. So when I was playing with the energy curve, I'd seen several other curves. There are bell curves and things that we use in models and psychologists, et cetera, do all the time. And I'd seen the one on stress, and I looked at it and went, that's not really what I want to, refer to in the book. So I developed my own. And this is based on what I see. And it's sort of overlays some stages of organizational development too. So, when we're in something that's new and creative, we're typically on this left-hand side of the curve, where we're moving from, really inspired in our work, ignited and exuberant, and there's this creativity and all of that. But as we get into the concentration and the momentum, we may find that we're wearing ourselves out. And one of the things that I'm really cautious of is the word resilient. When I hear people saying we want all of our people to be resilient, that means you're doing more with less, and you want people to show up regardless of the workload, et cetera. And so there's sort of a slippery slope there that begins with that word, where people go into the nostalgic about when it was fun, when it was the good old days, when we weren't merging 4 or 5 other companies and layering people on top of people, and nobody really clear about where we're going or what we're doing this for. So when organizations mature, and when they don't innovate, when they are really sort of swimming in, just listening to a lot of consultants, then what happens is people get frozen. And when they get frozen in this nostalgic stuff, they start avoiding each other. They avoid the truth. We get stuck in fear, which means we're not accessing our executive brain, our problem-solving capabilities. We're not moving through, anything. We just stay in the fear. So we disengage and become disheartened. And that's where the victim shows up. So that's where we become zombified.
Wow.
Ex machina. And we go, from that space of overwhelm. If you look at the bottom where I've got the zombie woman, that's Zombie Frida. You saw Zombie Fred in the picture, but Zombie Frida is moving over to, okay, I'm surviving. Sometimes the best you can get out of people is that they're surviving, and when they start saying, no, I'm just fine, that's also a warning sign. You can slide back down that slope right there, too, or you can begin to say, okay, I'm fine, but here's what I really need to be engaged.
This is great stuff.
It is great stuff. And then the thriving piece, and then how it just moves up the energy ramp from there all the way up to, it goes from thriving, inspired, ignited, exuberant to zealot.
Zealot.
Zealed out. And that's what I started with. They're zealed out, which is zealot. And, a lot of people said, you can't use that in business. And I said, well, I'm just going to, because I'm kind of tired of hiding out. And so, by the way, you see those little bubbles, like the chaos, the changes and challenges?
Yes.
The people who are on the left side, when those things bubble up, the people who are inspired and ignited, they see that and go, oh, interesting. Isn't that an interesting problem to solve? The people who are on the left or the right-hand side who are beginning to avoid or afraid of the changes, what do you think they do with that? So if you're leading a company, you need to be paying attention to this energy curve.
Yeah, and you know what I love about it? You reminded me of something. We have about a minute left, but there was the 2 employees that worked for a very famous tennis shoe company back in the day, and they were sent to Africa, to one of the areas in Africa, to sell shoes. And so they got there, and the first person called and said, oh my God, we have unlimited access here. No one wears shoes. Everyone's barefooted. We're going to explode in this part of the world. The second employee called also in another part of Africa and said, okay, we're wasting our time. You threw your money away. Nobody wears shoes here. There's nothing we're going to be able to do. This is terrible. I need to come back home. So you can see who the zealot is there, and you can see who the zombie is there.
Absolutely.
And you can also see from the graph where in the book you talk about the reawaken piece, the remember, the reconnect, and the rehumanization. And
there's also a zombie rescue kit. I know you only have a few seconds left, but there is a zombie rescue kit. So if you go to zombies2zealots.com, that's a website for the book, you can go to download the kit. And in there, you can write your own soulful goals. You can look at a whole dimension of who you are through an energy wheel there, and download some tools that, will help you start doing some inner work so you can realize your soul's longing and become the zealot.
That's right. And, when you write things down, your life starts to move in a different direction, a much happier, more powerful direction, I think. Don't you, DJ?
Absolutely. And, there's an energy to that, right? There's actually a law of physics. One of the things to do is write out where you see yourself in a year, imagine it, and then watch how Providence takes over and gives you all the tools you need to realize it.
I love that. And that is Miss DJ Mitsch with Zombies to Zealots, Reawaken the Human Spirit at Work. And I have to say one last little final thing to my Petite Flower Princess Giver Goddess, fabulous high-frequency friend back there in the Carolinas. I want you to know that it did not pass my attention that this one person is wearing a pearl bracelet on the cover of your book.
That is a signature thing, as you know, from Mystic Grits, which was my first book, and actually you're in that story, as you know.
Yeah. So I was like, I love the pearl bracelet because I know what she's doing. That's my DJ. Thank you. We love you so much.
You were great, and we want to have you back again, please.
I want to come back. Thank you, Tony.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. We have another great guest for you at the top of the hour, and we just going to take a short break. But until then, we want to say goodbye to our new friend, or my new friend, and Eddie's
friend.
I was going to say something else, but I didn't want to insult either one of them. But
soul friend.
Soul friend. There we go.
Thank you.
All right, well, this is Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And we'll be back in a minute.
Thanks, DJ. Bye.
Hey, thank you for listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie right here on Universal Broadcasting Network. Make sure you go to our iTunes page. Just type in Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. Listen to us on iHeartRadio. Again, Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. And go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So please support our sponsors and make sure you listen to us every Friday right here on Universal Broadcasting Network from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, have a good week.